She didn't just walk away from a man, she walked away from a soul that would have bled for her without ever asking for anything back. You were the quiet protector, the one who noticed her pain before she spoke it. You gave her safety, you gave her stability, and she mistook it all for weakness. She thought your silence meant you had no other options. She thought your loyalty was desperation. What she didn't realize was that you weren't staying because you had nowhere else to go. You stayed because your word meant something. She walked away from a love she didn't understand, thinking it was ordinary. She thought she could replace it, that another man, another thrill, another body would somehow fill the space you carved out in her life. But you weren't a moment, you were the foundation. And when it cracked, so did she, only she doesn't feel it yet. Not until the silence starts to echo. Not until she laughs and remembers you used to make her laugh harder. Not until every face she sees starts blending together, because none of them truly know her. You didn't run to someone new. You ran straight into the fire she left you in and came out steel. The version of you now? He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't even look back. You've grown into the kind of man who makes the room shift when he enters, not because he's loud, but because he's leveled up so far that even her memory can't reach him. And now, every night when she lays next to someone who doesn't know how to read her silence, doesn't protect her spirit, doesn't match her energy, she thinks about the one man who did. She let you go because she thought she could do better. Now she scrolls through your glow-up and realizes she already had the best. And she lost him, not by accident, but by choice. And there's no pain heavier than that. Now, I want you to drop an affirmation in the comments. She let me go. I let myself grow. Let's get started. Number 1. She left a warrior. Now she dates cowards. She left a man who was at war with himself, not realizing that beneath his silence was the heart of a warrior. She saw the patience, the forgiveness, the quiet sacrifices, and mistook it for softness. She didn't understand that real strength isn't loud. It bleeds quietly in the dark, with no applause, no witnesses. She thought love was supposed to feel effortless, thrilling, new every day, without ever realizing that the most powerful love often looks like showing up when it's hard, staying when it's heavy, and choosing the same soul even when it's tired. She didn't see the weight you carried behind every smile, the pressure of trying to be enough in a world where men are taught to never break. She didn't know the discipline it took to stay loyal when every part of you was tired of being unseen. Now she's with someone easier, someone light, someone who doesn't challenge her, doesn't see into her silence, doesn't fight to understand her depth. And you've stopped asking why she left. You've stopped blaming yourself because deep down you know it wasn't your strength she couldn't handle, it was your depth. And cowards drown in deep water. You're no longer bleeding for someone who couldn't recognize your scars. You've picked up your sword, not to seek revenge, but to rebuild the kingdom within yourself. No more proving your worth. No more saving someone who didn't want to be saved. You were a warrior long before she left. You just didn't know it yet. And now, every step forward is a step into the man you were always meant to become. Not the version she could handle, but the one she was never ready for. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." You've begun now, and there's no turning back. Now drop this in the comments like you mean it. I was loyal in silence. Now I rise without apology. Number 2. Your silence hits louder than your tears. You did everything you could. You stayed when it would have been easier to walk. You answered messages you should have ignored. You forgave what broke you, not because you were weak, but because you loved with both hands open. You weren't loud about it. You weren't dramatic. Your love didn't live in poems or promises. It lived in presence, in how you showed up, in how you remembered the little things, stayed through the storms, and gave without keeping score. But she didn't get it. She thought your silence meant you didn't care. She thought the absence of drama meant you didn't feel pain. So she pushed, she tested, she took, again and again, because somewhere in her mind, she believed you'd always be there. Until one day, you weren't. You didn't scream. You didn't threaten to leave. You just stopped texting, stopped explaining, stopped fighting for what already bled you dry. And that silence, it hit louder than anything you ever said. Now she scrolls through old messages at 2 a.m., trying to remember what your voice sounded like when you said her name. She replays your laugh through a video she swore she deleted. She watches your profile without ever liking a thing, hoping your eyes still look tired. Because that's what she can't stand, that you're calm, that you've stopped needing closure, that your peace now burns brighter than your pain ever did. You haven't replaced her. You've replaced the version of yourself that tolerated being misunderstood. You haven't gotten colder. You've simply become unavailable to people who only value you in your absence. This is Stoicism, not apathy, but the highest form of strength, choosing not to engage where chaos once lived. Marcus Aurelius once said, "To love only what happens, what was destined. No greater harmony." You've accepted what broke you, and that's what makes you dangerous now, not because you're angry, but because you're done. Now drop this in the comments like your future depends on it. My silence is not weakness, it's closure. Number 3. She expected you to wait. You evolved. She thought leaving you would be temporary, a pause, a chapter she could one day return to when the world stopped distracting her. She didn't walk away with finality. She walked away like someone bookmarking a page, assuming the story would wait for her. She thought time was hers to spend, that love would stay frozen until she was ready again. But what she never calculated was that the version of you she left behind wouldn't be there when she looked back. Because something shifted. The pain didn't paralyze you, it pushed you. You stopped chasing answers. You stopped replaying the last message, and you started moving. Slowly at first, quietly. You picked up books you never thought you'd read. You hit the gym not to impress her, but to reclaim your discipline. You got focused. You got still. You poured into your craft, your work, your body, your mind, not to escape her, but to return to yourself. And in that silence, something powerful happened. The man who used to overthink every word, reread old texts, wonder what he did wrong, now values peace over closure, now leaves messages on read, now keeps his phone on do not disturb, not out of pettiness, but out of purpose. She thought you'd be stuck. She thought you'd freeze in place like some character she could come back to when the fun ran out. But now she's staring at a man she doesn't even recognize. Because while she was out exploring options, you were becoming the option no one compares to. And now, that space she wanted has become a canyon, a distance too wide for her to bridge. You're not the same. You're sharper now, calmer, colder maybe, but only because the fire inside you are finally burning in the right direction. She thought you'd wait, but men like you don't wait. You evolve. Now drop this in the comments and claim it. I stopped waiting. I started becoming. Number 4. She won the breakup. You'll win life. Right after she left, it looked like she won. She was out smiling in every photo, surrounding herself with noise, chasing distractions, posting proof that she was fine. The world watched and believed it. She glowed on the surface. And you? You disappeared. You weren't at parties. You weren't uploading cryptic captions. You were in your room, face down in the dark, wrestling with silence that felt like it might never end. You stopped talking, not because you didn't have anything to say, but because you couldn't find a single person who'd understand the kind of pain you couldn't explain. The people around you said, "She moved on fast," and all you could do was nod, pretending that their words didn't slice through you. They didn't know you hadn't slept right in days. They didn't know how much strength it took just to get out of bed, to look in the mirror, to not send that last message. You were broken, but not destroyed. That's the part no one saw, the part no one talks about. The silent war men fight behind locked doors, where there's no one to catch them, no one to hear the cracking of a soul being rebuilt. And now the silence has become your power. She won the first week because she needed the world to think she did. But time told the truth. Her joy was borrowed. Yours was earned. She had to go out to feel alive. You had to die inside to come back stronger. The man you are now doesn't seek attention. He commands respect. Not because he's louder, but because he's walked through fire no one clapped for. You're not chasing closure. You've already closed the door. And what's waiting on the other side isn't another girl. It's the life you were meant to live before you forgot who you were trying to love her. She won the breakup. But you're going to win the rest of your life. Number 5. She walked out. Now she watches you rise. She walked out thinking the story was over. She expected to leave you in pieces, shattered and stuck, replaying every moment you spent together like a man haunted by what he lost. She assumed your world revolved around her, and once she stepped out of it, everything would fall apart. What she never imagined was that her absence would become your turning point, that the pain she left behind would become the pressure that forged a different man, one who no longer breaks at the thought of her name. At first, she didn't notice. She was busy living loud, but change doesn't always announce itself. Growth happens in silence, and while she was trying to forget you, you were outgrowing her. The man she left behind doesn't exist anymore. That man stopped checking who viewed his story, stopped wondering who she's with, stopped waiting for a message that was never coming. He stopped performing grief for an audience that never cared. Instead, he got to work. He started building a reputation she never believed he could carry. Now, your name travels further than she ever thought possible. Not because you flaunt it, but because your consistency speaks louder than her assumptions. People mention you in rooms she can't access. You show up in conversations with power, not pity. And that quiet success, it's deafening. She's watching now, not with the same pride you once hoped for, but with a silence that carries something else entirely. Regret, confusion, that deep, unsettling ache of knowing she gave up the one man who turned loss into legacy. She didn't think you'd rise because she never thought she was stepping away from a man. She thought she was walking away from a phase. But now she realizes you weren't just a chapter. You were the book, and you're still being written. Stronger, sharper, unapologetically you. Number 6. She lost you. Peace found you. You used to beg. Not just with words, but with presence, effort, and a loyalty she never earned. You bent yourself into shapes just to hold on, thinking that if you gave enough, stayed long enough, broke yourself gently enough, she'd finally understand the depth of what you carried. But nothing worked. She didn't change. She didn't soften, she didn't stay. And when she finally walked away, it wasn't just her absence you had to survive. It was the quiet, the silence after the pleading, the stillness after the storm. It felt like drowning in a room full of air, but in that darkness, something unexpected happened. You didn't find her coming back. You found something far more powerful: peace. Not the kind that arrives wrapped in closure or the kind you post about to look strong. No, this was the kind of peace that hurts before it heals, the kind that sits in your chest and rearranges your entire identity. You stopped replaying what happened. You stopped trying to figure out why love wasn't enough. You stopped needing answers. And that's when peace found you. You started waking up without the weight in your chest, started walking slower, thinking deeper, talking less. You started living in the present instead of bleeding for the past. You didn't become bitter. You became still. And now that stillness makes people nervous, because the man who used to fight for attention now commands respect in silence. The man who once reacted emotionally now responds with nothing but calm. No arguments, no explanations, just boundaries, just focus, just forward motion. She lost someone who would have moved the earth for her. But you gained something untouchable: peace. That deep Stoic strength that doesn't need validation, that calm confidence that doesn't fear loss anymore, because now you finally know the value of your own presence. She thought losing you was about her, but losing her, that was the beginning of you. Number 7, she left the storm. Now the storm walks alone. You loved hard, not because you were reckless, but because you were real. You didn't give half your heart. You gave it all, without flinching. You showed up with fire in your chest and loyalty in your bones. And instead of appreciating it, she labeled it too much, too intense, too deep, too emotional. But that was never the truth. The truth was, she wasn't ready for a man who didn't flinch at depth. She wasn't prepared for someone who saw through surface-level games and demanded presence, not performance. She didn't walk away because you were a storm. She walked because she didn't know how to stand in the rain without running. She wasn't scared of your chaos. She was scared of being exposed by it, because every time you got close, it made her confront everything shallow inside her. And when she finally left, you started believing maybe she was right, maybe you were too much. But that's the lie they always tell strong men who feel deeply. You weren't too much. You were just too real for someone who was never built to handle that level of fire. And now, that fire hasn't died, it's just changed direction. You've stopped setting yourself on fire to keep people warm. You've stopped apologizing for caring too deeply, loving too fully, hurting too silently. You've learned to walk alone, not bitter, not broken, just focused, grounded, lethal in your peace. Because now you've channeled what once tore you apart. Now the storm doesn't chase, the storm walks, and people either get out of the way or get changed by it. She left thinking she escaped chaos. But all she did was lose the one man who could turn chaos into purpose. And now she hears about you in whispers, sees your progress in silence, feels your absence in every man who doesn't know how to handle her silence. You were never too much. She was just never enough. And now the storm doesn't need a destination. Number 8, you were home. Now she's homeless. You weren't just a man to her. You were her calm, her safety, her place to land when the world felt too loud. You didn't just hold her. You held space for her. You gave her permission to be flawed, to be vulnerable, to exhale without fear. You gave her your time without conditions, your energy without expectations, and in doing so, you became her home. But she didn't see it that way. She mistook your calm for complacency. She confused your consistency with boredom. She thought love meant constant fireworks, forgetting that peace isn't loud. So she walked, not in anger, but in arrogance, thinking she'd find better, thinking love this grounded would always be waiting. But the thing about home is, once you leave it thinking there's something more exciting out there, you start realizing everything else is temporary, because now she's out there, looking for that feeling again. In people who don't listen to understand, in arms that don't know how to hold her chaos, in conversations that feel like small talk instead of soul talk. She's chasing pieces of you in people who feel like layovers, not destinations. Every smile feels staged. Every touch feels cold. Because when someone has felt real presence, nothing shallow ever feels the same again. And you're no longer standing still. You've locked the doors, turned the lights low, and found a deeper home inside yourself. You no longer hand out comfort to those who abandoned it. You no longer explain the value of your presence to people who chose distance. You gave her something rare, and she left like it was ordinary. But the silence after losing someone who made chaos feel safe, that silence is louder than any argument. Now every room she walks into feels colder. Every bed she lies in feels temporary. Because once you've known what it's like to feel seen, felt, and protected, being unseen is unbearable. You were home. Now she's just searching. Number 9. The broken man is gone. You're unrecognizable. There was a time you couldn't look in the mirror without seeing pieces of her staring back at you. You cried quietly, like a man who didn't want the world to know he was breaking. You whispered her name into a pillow that had memorized her absence, thinking maybe, just maybe, if you hurt enough, she'd come back. Nights blurred into mornings. Sleep became survival, and you told yourself the pain would never leave, that the hole she left behind could never be filled. But time didn't rescue you, you rescued yourself. You didn't numb the pain, you faced it. And little by little, pain stopped feeling like punishment. It started to feel like training. Every unanswered text hardened your resolve. Every night alone forced you to meet the parts of yourself you had forgotten. You didn't just heal, you rebuilt. From the inside out, you read the books, hit the gym, mastered your discipline. You turned your weakness into wisdom and your wounds into armor. No one clapped, no one cheered, but in silence, you became something stronger than healed. You became unrecognizable. Now you walk different, talk different. Not louder, just heavier, like a man who's carried grief and come back with gold. You don't flinch when her name is mentioned. You don't wonder where she is or who she's with. You've stopped looking for closure because you realized you were always the ending. And if she saw you now, she'd smile politely, say how different you look, maybe even try to act like she's happy for you. But deep down, she'd feel it. That distance between who you were and who you are now isn't measured in time. It's measured in evolution. You're not the man who broke. You're the man who built, and what you've become, it's not for her to understand, it's for you to protect. Number 10, you don't chase anymore. That's her punishment. She used to expect you, not just hope, expect. The morning texts that showed she mattered, the long replies to her short messages, the way you gave her your heart without holding back. She was used to the chase, the pursuit, the consistency. And the truth is, you gave it all willingly. Not because you were desperate, but because when you love, you don't ration. You give, fully, fearlessly. But something changed. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, the way real transformation does. It wasn't a decision to stop loving her. It was a decision to start loving yourself more. And now, the energy has shifted. She watches your stories, hoping you'll slip up and notice her name. She sends a harmless, "Hey," pretending it's casual, but knowing exactly what she's doing. She posts photos that feel staged, hoping to catch your attention. But you're no longer reachable. Not because you blocked her, not because you're playing games, but because you've moved beyond her frequency. You don't respond with anger. You don't post to get even. You don't reply to remind her you're still there. You've become the one thing she never prepared for, a man who no longer chases. And that is her punishment, because silence is not always passive. Sometimes it's the loudest message a man can send. You didn't vanish to hurt her. You vanished because you outgrew the need to explain your worth. She thought she'd always be able to reel you back in, that you'd always bite when she dangled attention. But you're not hungry for what already starved you. You're not thirsty for what drained you. Now, she's left with memories she used to ignore, and a version of you she'll never touch again. No closure, no access, no second chances, just distance, just quiet, just you, untouchable, unreadable, unreachable. And in that absence, she finally hears the echo of your presence. Let her regret it. Let her remember the man who gave everything and ask herself why she burned it. But you, don't go back to prove her wrong. Grow so far, she wouldn't even know how to speak to the man you are now. Let her scroll through your success. Let her sit in silence, replaying your name. Let her wonder. But you live. You live like someone who refuses to die in someone else's memory. And if you're that man now, comment this final line for every brother going through it. She let go of gold. Now I shine where she'll never reach. Like this video if you felt something. Subscribe if you're rising from something. And remember, the man who controls his emotions controls his legacy. We don't break. We become.